maybe a little bit of humor in keeping with the holidays. Years ago, we used to have a Weasel. I don't know how many of you remember that, but it was an Army surplus small track vehicle. Hold 4 to 6 guys in equipment. And grass fire season, a lot of times you're slugging through mud trying to put out the fire, and you take a 4-wheel drive and you bury it. So they thought maybe this track vehicle would help. Now, I can't honestly say that I was ever at a fire when that was in operation, but I'm quite sure we did use it. And I'm not sure how long we had it. It wasn't that great a number of years, but we finally got rid of it. All right. The second thing is, we had a piece of equipment that wouldn't fit in the fire station. So the only thing we could do with it is park it out on the Pine Creek Road, about 8 miles, at the airport. It was a Piper Cub. Now, an older fellow named Robertson donated it to us, I think. And it was an older craft, but it was serviceable. And we had a couple pilots in the organization so they could fly it. Now, the biggest thing with that airplane, the reason we got it, is you had a fire in the canyon a year ago or so? All right.
Just this spring, actually.
That was a normal occurrence years ago. We used to run maybe half a dozen fires every year down in the canyon. And they were no little ones. And so they got that airplane to keep the ground crew informed of the progress of the fire, and also they'd patrol the canyon to see if there was any fire. Now, that was all caused by the New York Central steamers coming up through there. It spit out hot cinders. And if the conditions were just right on the forest floor, all right, they'd start a fire. All right, then they switched to diesel. Now we thought, well, boy, that's a godsend. We won't have to worry about those anymore. Boy, were we wrong. Now, instead of hot sparks, you've got globs of hot carbon. And conditions didn't have to be ideal. They'd still start a fire. And they'd start maybe 50 yards, 100 yards up the side of the mountain. Very seldom alongside the track. It would even blow that hot carbon clear across Pine Creek. And you would have fire on the other side. So you'd have to use a boat to get to it. Now, I remember once we drove down into Tayadon, got our gear, went down the track 200 or 300 yards. The fire was up on the left-hand side, and it was blowing toward Jersey Shore. We hiked all the way up the side of that lousy mountain and took care of the hot spots on the way up. Then worked our way across the top, putting out the fire, and then fought the main body of the fire on the way down. Now, I'm telling you, when you got back to the car, you knew you put in a day's work. Now, I'm not sure which happened first, whether the airplane just got too expensive to maintain or they quit the rail service. But anyway, that took care of most of our fires in the canyon. All right, the third thing, after the war, your late 40s, early 50s, you had a lot of servicemen returning. And they were all used to marching. And so, all over the country, drill teams sprang up Wellsboro was no exception. The fire department had a drill team. Now there's a picture floating around here someplace that shows the drill team. And it was just say a plane, all of it was in short order. It was under Shorty Payne, the fire police chief, was the commander of it, and it was just short order drill. Now some of them had drum and bugle corps. I can't go without saying the Gaelton VFW, and under Johnny Sullivan, they had a marching unit with rifles. And I think they had special butt plates, so when they banged them on the ground, it'd give you a special effect. And they used to have conventions all over the United States. And one year, Gaelton took first place in the United States for drill team competition. All right, we were never quite that famous. But we used to get invited to different parades. And about that same time, I used to send to Ohio every year before it and get a big box of firecrackers. And there was everything in there. So we got invited one 4th of July up to Hornell, New York, which we accepted. All right, I took a long pocket full of those small firecrackers. Then we went to Hornell. Well, after the parade, we were walking across the parade ground there. And I brought out a package of those firecrackers. And I don't know, you've probably seen them. They're about 2 inches long, about 20 in a pack, all woven together. So you could take them apart and shoot one at a time, or just light the one, throw them on the ground, and they'd just fly all over. All right, so we were going along, and I tossed one out there, and we kept walking. Pretty soon, bang, 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 bangity bang, bang. Then pretty soon that bangity bang, bang turned into whoppity whop whop. What's going on here? There's some woman behind me beating me over the head with her purse. Whoa! Now, when those firecrackers went off, one of those firecrackers went up and lit in her hair and then went off. Now, everybody else around was just laughing their full heads off. I'll tell you, that woman just had no sense of humor whatsoever. We had to run for our lives. All right, so we weathered that one. And it was rather late before we finally got back into Wellsboro. Jim English and Bob Gross and I. Well, we thought we might as well have one more beverage before we turned in. So we stopped in the steakhouse. And I took a single firecracker and put it in Bob Gross's belt loop, blew a hole in his white shirt. And then we got the bright idea to throw one out in the street. Now, I didn't bother to look out in the street. I just opened the door and threw one out and started back in. Well, the way the windows were down there, you couldn't see a person, but you could see legs walking up and down the street. I no sooner got back in and we saw a pair of legs. Now, Bob and Jim and Pearlie and myself, we all knew who it was. Pearlie Lott, Chief of Police. Well, we waited for the inevitable. Didn't happen. Now, either it was a dud or Pearlie stepped on it. So anyway, we thought, okay, we better call it quits. And then I got another one of my famous bright ideas. I had a lot of bright ideas. I'm not saying that they were good bright ideas. They were just bright ideas. Yeah. So we went down the house, and I had I'm going to call them torpedoes. But you had a block of wood, 6 or 7 inches square. And on top of that, you had tubes 4 or 5 inches tall in a circle. And you'd light the first one, it would go off, go up in the air 40 or 50 foot and explode. Then it would set the second one off. So we went up Main Street, in front of the hotel, went across, pulled over toward the sub shop. We got out, Bob and I got out. I put the thing on the ground, Bob lit it. And jumped back in the car. Jim had it in first gear and we started out towards Pearl Street. He didn't get it out of first gear. When we looked up, guess who was standing in the middle of the road at Dunham's Alley? Pearlie Lawton, chief of police. Well, he was checking doors at Dunham's Hardware. And he saw us get out of the car, saw us jump back in. He figured we were up to no good. So we stood in the middle of the road. All right, we pulled up. Pearlie was a tall guy, real mild-mannered. Yeah. So we pulled up, stopped. He said, "And what are you boys up to?" Boom! He had a smile on his face. You guys like to play with firecrackers. Boom! Every time he'd ask his question, it was the same answer. Boom! Well, when the 5 shots got done, and Pearlie quit laughing, then he wanted to know who was guilty. Well, instead of one of us taking the blame and the other 2 guys chipping in on the fine, we were buddy-buddies, you know. We were all guilty. Well, that suited Pearlie. He arrested all of us. All right. Stacy Spencer was the justice of the peace, and he ran the barber shop down on the Bowery on East Avenue, along with his son Gabby. And he had an office behind the barber shop that he used to hold court there. And you had to go through the barber shop to get to it. All right, so after the 4th of July, in comes Pearlie with his 3 culprits, and we went in the judge's office. All right, he fined us $15 apiece. Now, back in the 50s, that was no little matter. So anyway, it was years and years and years before we could go in for a haircut without being reminded that we like to play with firecrackers. So, I'm kind of a slow learner. I didn't learn anything in Hornell. I didn't learn anything at the steakhouse. I sure learned it at Main Street. And I think that was the last year I ever sent to Ohio for fireworks. So the moral of the story is, don't play with fireworks. It can be hazardous to your health and your wealth.